Have you ever felt like you're living out a bad soap opera? Yeah, am I talking about this week's Torah portion or current events? And the answer is yes. Sometimes you just wonder, all this stuff comes together. And there's Torah portions I really look forward to teaching on, like Abraham and his faithfulness, and Isaac, the commitment to this young man, the faith that he has in his father. Get over to Joseph, but something about Jacob, and I'm not really sure if I want to examine the reasons that I'm not real crazy about Jacob's this Torah portion regarding Jacob, and in fact even the last one. I think it probably comes down to this thing of dysfunction, okay, and maybe it's that it reveals a little bit more than what many people would like to or myself would like to admit. So I want to go back to something that I said this past week at our congregation. And for anyone that's, if you're traveling around, want a vacation or something in Franklin, North Carolina, we'd love to have you come by and visit us. We get together in Franklin 2 o'clock in the afternoon for some snacks, fellowship stuff, and then 3 o'clock for service. I'm sorry, we don't record those. We don't live stream and all that. I have my reasons there, but I want to go to something that I brought out to them on this past Shabbat, and it is regarding this thing called dysfunction. It's something that Israel, the family of El as a whole, has been dealing with since the days of Jacob. We could probably go back all the way to Adam, but it's something that we still deal with today. And I see this so often. So I want to make a few statements regarding dysfunction. And first of all is this, that we need to each decide to deal with our own dysfunction. The only way that you can become functional is to deal with the dysfunction. And let's face it, everyone has. We could go around in any room and come up with all the things of dysfunction that we have, write them down on a board, and come up with a 12-step process to work through them and regurgitate them on a weekly basis. Or you can just make a decision that I want to deal with as much as I can the dysfunction of my own life. Okay, that's a first commitment. Number 2 is to have grace for other people's dysfunction. Understanding that, we all bring something of dysfunction to the table, and so I need to deal with mine. I need to have grace for others, because, maybe they're at a place they're not really able to, or maybe, it's through our relationship that they'll be able to deal with it. So have grace for others' dysfunction. But here's another one. Never excuse or empower either. I think this is maybe one of the most important things that I could say regarding this subject. That we should never excuse our own dysfunction. We should never excuse someone else's dysfunction. And we should never empower either. If someone has an addiction in their lives. I had a relative years ago that had a very bad food addiction. And people would actually empower that. You don't help someone out of their dysfunction by empowering their dysfunction. So we should never excuse it. We should never empower it. And we should always long for a time that our dysfunction will be totally removed. And maybe that's the most important lesson because maybe somewhere in that longing for, it would give us a greater empowering to deal with what we need to deal with. All right. So we go on to the next Torah portion, which is Genesis chapter 32, verse 4 through chapter 36, verse 43, and it is He sent. And we start out with what I would call the showdown at the Meseta Corral. All right, for those of you that don't know Hebrew, Meseta is okay. So the showdown at the OK Corral here, the Meseta Corral, with Jacob and his brother Esau. And this is probably why I don't, this is not one of my favorite Torah portions, because in the midst of this, in this thing between Jacob and Esau, it all kind of revolves to me around a word that is found in verse 21, in this chapter 32, 21 or 20, depending on your translation, the verse. And he's in your to add, and there just behind us is your servant Yankov, for he said, I will appease him first with the present that goes ahead of me, then after that I will see him myself. This word appease is one that bothers me tremendously. That, well, in order to understand what the word is, let's go back to the first time that this word is used in the scripture, and it is found over in Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 14, it says, make yourself an ark of gopher wood, and you're to make the ark with rooms and appease it with pitch, both inside and outside. That's the word. The word is kafar. So what was Jacob trying to do here? Jacob, in this word appease, is trying to cover up, or should we say cover over the things that have happened in the past. This is a place of a showdown between these two men. Jacob is in a place that he has the blessing, he has the covenant has been given, everything has been given to him, and he should not be trying to appease his brother. The reason is that he should see his brother for who his brother is. And this is a difficult thing of life for many people. You know, we've dealt with some characters as we've gone through the Torah portions. We've dealt with Lot, and how Lot was a veil over the eyes of Abraham. And it was not until Lot was removed that Abraham could see clearly. We see in Jacob that he had to deal with Lavan, who was a false purity, a false holiness. But then there's Esau. Esau is not a veil. Esau is not a false holiness. Esau is an enemy. And when we, and I say we in a, not to point fingers at anyone, here it's just more of a generic term. When you or I could say it like that, when we do not recognize enemies for who they are and try to get along with them, appease them, cover over things, who does that end up destroying? I think we all know the answer to that. At some point in time, we all have to stand up to the enemy that is the reality of Esau in our lives. This appeasement would cause Jacob to bring him into a wrestling match, or as Barry Phillips would say in Grassy Creek, wrestling, something similar to that. His southern accent's a little bit different than mine, but it would bring him into a wrestling match. I wonder how the account would have played out maybe a little bit different, the end result being the same, okay? The end result is to be the name change from Jacob, the supplanter, the one that grabs the heel, to the one who is the Prince of El. That's what's to happen as we go through this. But could the scenario have been a little different if Jacob had said when he heard of Esau coming, okay, I'm putting an end to this, instead of the appeasement mode? I don't know. But what we have is the next part of this account is this account of Jacob wrestling with this angel. Now, there are at least 3 different ways that I know of to translate and to look at this account. There are those that believe that he was wrestling with a pre-manifestation of Yeshua, of the Messiah. That he was wrestling with the spirit of Esau. I even heard it taught one time that he was wrestling with Hasatan, or a demonic force. Okay, so what do we see here? Who is he wrestling with? Or is that the wrong question? Is the question not who he's wrestling with as far as the exact entity, or is it the purpose of the wrestling match? Now, in the end, he will say that, he will ask for this blessing, and he will proclaim the places, the face of El, because I have seen Elohim face to face, yet my life is spared. So I would tend, to lay my cards out here, I would tend to say that yes, this is Elohim in some form that Yankov is wrestling with. But I'm not going to discount. Some, I think you're a little far-fetched, but I'm not going to discount totally that this could have been other entities that Yankov could have wrestled with. Because the Almighty Elohim, God, he comes to us in different ways. It's one of the mysteries of life is trying to figure out life. Okay, I think if you sit back and ponder that one, it makes a whole lot more sense, right? One of the mysteries of life is trying to figure out life. And sometimes when we think we're wrestling with one thing, it's actually that we're wrestling with something else, but the source of the wrestling was Elohim himself, so as to bring forth the outcome. So he has an outcome that is his desire for our life. He has a path that is his desire. And so he puts anything into that path that we need to wrestle with in order for us to overcome and then take us to the destination that he has planned. For Jacob, it is the name change from the supplanter, the grabber of the heel, to the Prince of Elohim. So, to me, it's not relevant of who he was wrestling with. It is the outcome of the wrestling match. And that was to take this man and to rename him. We could look at it as a born-again experience. We could even insert into Jacob from this point on, from Jacob Esau, we insert into his life, and this is kind of an assignment for you as you read through from this point forward regarding Jacob, that when it's used, and I'll mention this specifically in just a moment, that when he's operating at times in the character of Jacob, still does that. And then he has these moments he's operating in the character of Israel. I think that Paul talks about that somewhere when he says, the things that I want to do, I don't do. But the things that I don't want to do, I do. You know, we all hopefully understand this born-again experience that we've been given a new name, a new identity, a new character, a new way of looking at life. But yet, there's times that you want to operate in that. You know it's the right thing to do, but you find yourself operating like Jacob. And then there's times that it's like, oh wow, I finally got it right just for a moment. I'm operating in the character of Israel. And hopefully as life goes on and you mature more and more, that there's more times that we operate as Israel than as Jacob. Okay? Now, he goes before Esau. We know the splitting of the camps and all of these things that's happening here. I want to go to chapter 33, verse 9. Esau replied, and we know that, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but he sends all this stuff, okay? Esau's got a lot of stuff already, but Jacob sends a lot more stuff to him, thinking that, well, if I can just appease him with stuff, then everything's going to be fine. But Esau replies, I have plenty already, my brother. Yes. Keep your possessions for yourself. Yankov said, no, please. If now I have won favor, then accept my gift. Just seeing your face has been like seeing the face of Elohim. Now that you have received me, so please accept the gift I brought you. For Elohim has dealt kindly with me, and I have enough. Thus he urged him until he accepted it. Question. Did Yankov, was he operating a little bit out of guilt here? Is it possible, and this is kind of a new thought for me, so excuse me as we discuss it together and I'm doing the discussing, but is he operating a little bit out of guilt? Is he, though he knows that his receiving of the blessing was the right thing, that even before his memory, the things that his mother told him about the fighting that was going on in her womb, the way that he came from the womb with his hand up trying to guard himself from Esau, trying to put his heel through his head, the walking in covenant, the making of the stew representing the covenant, the death of Abraham, all the way through to dressing up as Esau. Was there some guilt about this? Was there something in his life that was like, if only my brother had have stepped up to his place in life, then I'm not the firstborn. Esau is the firstborn, and I wish that he would have done what he was supposed to do. And was there something else driving him here? I've been around being an only child. I don't have to deal with I am the firstborn and only born, so I don't deal with these kind of issues. But I have dealt with other people with, numerous siblings in the family. And someone who, there was a firstborn that did not accept the covenant, did not walk in the covenant. And another one of the children, kind of like Joseph, had ended up doing, another one of the children would take over this slot. And as I was reading through this morning, it just kind of reminded me not of a specific situation, but of, kind of things that I've had to deal with, different people that I've had to deal with through the years, that maybe there's a place of guilt, of maybe thinking, well, I'm walking in this covenant, I'm walking in the Bakora, in the blessing of the covenant, but it's not really something that I deserve. It's something that should have been given to somebody else, but I kind of received it by default because they wouldn't. Jacob needed to stand up for who he was. He needed to walk in the strength of Israel for the man that he was, that he had always, from the beginning, been the one that was protecting the covenant. When we do that, we have no reason to feel guilty. If someone else in your family is not walking according to the covenant, and you are, okay, keep walking. Don't be guilty, because don't feel guilty that somebody else, well, I wish that they'd have gotten this revelation, because, they would have done a whole lot. Quit that. Quit the self-talk, okay? Quit the dysfunction and walk in what you're called to walk in. But it appears that Jacob had a difficult time doing that, and this would be the downfall of others in his family from time to time. One of them being in the next chapter in verse 34, which speaks of the whole situation of Dinah. Now, let's go back here to Genesis chapter 28. All right, let's go back to the pre-Laban days, the pre-exile days. Let's go over to Genesis chapter 28, starting in verse 20. Yankov took a vow, when, or if, I believe it to be when Elohim will be with me and will guard me on this road I am traveling, giving me bread to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return to my father's house in Shalom, then Yudhevavhe will be my Elohim, and this stone which I have set up as a standing stone will be Elohim's house, and of everything you give me I will faithfully return 1/10 to you. Now, he is standing, I believe, on the Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount. He's left Hebron, going to Haran. All right, he's left the place of the cave of Machpelah. He's left the place of the covenant, and he is traveling now to the area of Babylon, Iraq, that general vicinity up there. He has to go through, the route would have been like this. He goes past Beit El, the Temple Mount, Jerusalem, and I believe he makes this vow right there. He would have then traveled up the western bank of the Jordan River. He would gone up along next to the Mount of Blessing, next to Shiloh. Shiloh, Mount of Blessing, Malay Lavana, all of that area along there. He would have gone up to around north of Itamar. This is the same route that's going to be traveled over and over again. It doesn't change. So he's literally retracing the steps backwards of his grandfather, Abraham. He's going to see the same sights as his ancestors, the 12 tribes. His boys are going to come back in, okay? So Jacob's making this trek up there, up through that area. He's made this vow that's I just read in Genesis chapter 28. So when he turns around and starts coming back, where's he going? He's making the same trek. He's going around along north of Itamar up there. He starts to turn south. Here's the Mount of Blessing, the Mount of Curses. He doesn't know the events that are going to be in near history in that day, but he's right there, and here's this little town in that day, a little town called Shechem. Today, modern day Nablus, which is a huge city, which in the center of that is the tomb of Joseph. So here's my question. Why? Why does he stop here? Now, when we read the account, it says that one time Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Yankov, went to visit the local girls. What's she doing there? Why is this? Is this still some of the dysfunction? She's the daughter of Leah. So is Jacob, and here, get this, whom she had born to Jacob or Yankov. So he's not operating here in the midst of this as Israel, but he's operating as Jacob. So is there a blind spot regarding this daughter? Speculation, I got that. But sometimes you have to speculate in order to figure out what's going on and be able to then bring that into your own life. So is it possible that Yankov was not paying as close attention as he should have, because it was the daughter of Leah and not of Rachel? Okay. Moves on, and it says that she goes into the city. Shechem, the son of Hamor, the local ruler, saw her, grabbed her, raped her, and humiliated her. But actually, he was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Yankov. He fell in love with the girl, tried to win her affection, goes on from there, wants to have her as a wife. So she's been raped by these pagans in Shechem. Where's Yankov? Where's Jacob? What's he doing? Why is he there? Okay, here's the question that I want you to consider. Why is he there? And it says that she went to visit the local girls, which means to me that this was not just a stop overnight in Shechem, but he spent some time there to the point that she had become familiar with the area. So why didn't he go directly back to Beit El? How would this have been different? Is if he had, when he left Haran, when he left Esau, he would have set his mind totally and completely on the vow that he had made to Yah, and not turned to the right or to the left. When they came by Shechem, if he would have been persistent, if he'd been focused on, I've got a vow. I've got 10% of what I have been given. I mean, he makes a vow regarding when you give me bread and clothing, and look what he's coming back with. Okay, he's coming back with a whole family and a bunch of flocks and a bunch of stuff. The guy has got it. The guy is rich in the day with sheeps and herds and everything else you can imagine, and a family of at least 12 boys and one girl. It's probably more girls than that. What do you think? So what if instead of setting up camp there for a few days or weeks or whatever, he just said, no, we don't have time to stop here. We don't have time to stop here. I've got a vow that's got to be made. Could the story be totally different? Could this chapter literally be taken out of the book? Could Genesis be one chapter shorter? And take that to our own lives. What would be the difference in our own lives if we were more intentional? I guess that's about the best word. More intentional about fulfilling our vows instead of making detours along the way. And I'll leave that one. I'll leave that one for me to think about more as we get closer to Shabbat. So Simeon and Levi find out about this, and they're going to take vengeance for their sister. So much has been read and preached on these guys and what they did. Jacob will later on kind of speak against them in a bit of a curse, separating them because of what they did. Does it reveal another character flaw of Jacob? I'll let you make that decision there. That the appeasement that began with Esau is now carrying over. Yeah. So we shouldn't think that when we set something in motion in our life that it's not going to affect other areas of our life. If you appease one area of your life, that appeasement will affect other areas of life also. It says that in verse 30, but Yankov said to Shimon and Levi. It does not say that Israel said to Shimon and Levi. So what character is he operating? What nature is he operating in? He's not operating in his new nature of Israel. He's operating in his old nature of Yankov. This verse at the end, I think maybe this verse ties in so many things to me, is that he says in verse 31, they replied, this is Shimon and Levi, they replied to their father, should we let our sister be treated like a whore? Do you notice that there's no answer to the question? It just stops. I mean, I would love, there's this white part of the scripture between the last quotation mark there and then the number 35 for the next chapter, that little white area. What's in there? What's going on in that? Did Yankov scold the boys? Did he just turn around and walk off? We're not told. We're not told what happened right there. It appears, at least to me, it appears on the surface that Jacob never really dealt with it. Again, when you don't deal with, going back to dysfunction, when we don't deal with the things of life, don't expect it to just go away automatically on its own. And for someone that doesn't like conflict, I know people that thrive on conflict. I'm not one of those. I'll go out of my way, way out of my way to go around conflict. I don't like it. I grew up with it. The yelling, the screaming, and all that I don't like it. So I'll go out of my way. But at times, you must learn that conflict is necessary in order to move forward. All right. Chapter 35. Again, another reason I guess I don't like this Torah portion that much is that we're getting close. Get up to, go to Beit El. You've made it past Esau. You've gotten through Shechem. In verse 2, then Yankov, again, Yankov. Okay, it's important for us to see the word that's used, the name that's used for this man is very appropriate to what's going on here. Yankov said to his household and all the others with him, get rid of the foreign gods that you have with you, purify yourselves and put on fresh clothes. We're going to move on and go up to Beit El. There I will build an altar to Elohim, who answered me when I was in such distress, stayed with me wherever I went. So, the vow, he's going to complete the vow that was given. So he says to the household, put away, you need to wash your clothes, basically take a bath, do a mikvah, and put away the foreign gods. Who has foreign gods? Where are they? And here's the greater question. Why are they there? How'd they get there? It's obvious that there were foreign gods, because in verse 4, they gave Yankov all the foreign gods in their possession, and the earrings which they were wearing, and Yankov buried them under the pistachio tree near Shechem. Okay. So when Lavan comes after Jacob for the foreign gods, they were specific foreign gods. They were ones that Rachel, had stolen from her father's house. But there were other servants, other people that came with them. Why is it that Jacob never went through the camp and cleaned his own camp out? Okay, these are all just kind of, these are not pointing finger at Yankov questions. I wish. These are like pointing finger at us questions. Why is it that Yankov never went through his camp and cleaned house? Well, I mean, eventually he does. But what does he do? He says to the household and the others with him. Notice he does not say to Rachel, put away the foreign gods. Again, speculation. I do a lot of that in these, when we have these accounts. This is not like teaching on Leviticus, okay? There's not a lot of speculation in Leviticus. But when we have accounts of people, it's given to us for a purpose. And that purpose is so that we would interject our own lives into the story, into the account. If you're reading through the Torah, especially Genesis and Numbers, and you're not interjecting yourself into, go to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, I believe it is. These things are given to us as prefigurative historical events to teach us. So Shaul was saying, the reason that the Torah is written about people's lives is so that we could interject our own life into their lives. Or if you're just reading through it and going, okay, I got to the end, check that box off for this week, you're missing. We're missing the whole point here. Why is it that does he know? I know that they've got, the wives and the concubines and the tents and all this kind of stuff. But I find it kind of difficult to believe that Jacob doesn't know that his wife has these foreign gods, these foreign idols, these false gods. So why didn't he go to her? Why didn't he go to her and say, dear, we need to have a conversation? Instead of just making a blanket. It'd be like, I've done this in ministry. I was taught this many years ago by a pastor in Assembly of God Church. He said, son, never preach with a rifle. Always preach with a shotgun. And what's I know that politically correct, which none of you are, but political correctness would go crazy on that one. But if I was to stand up in a congregation of 100 people and speak at one person, I'd miss everybody else. I'd miss 99 probably. But I'm going to hit that one, but that one's probably not listening. So what should you do? If a person, it's like gathering your whole family together. Let's say you have a number of kids, and you notice some crayon marks on the wall. You know which one did it, but you gather them all together and say, now, you guys should not be coloring on the wall with crayons. Well, no, you need to go to the person. So Yankov should have, in my opinion, should have gone to his wife, Raquel, and said, honey, we need to deal with something. I've been reluctant in this, but before we move farther on, because I spoke some words. And if you don't get rid of these words, it's not going to look nice in the end. And it didn't. Because as they move on, it says that Raquel went into hard labor, and she died in childbirth. As she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, which is here translated son of my grief, but his father called him Benjamin, son of my right hand, son of the south, and Raquel died. Ben-Oni. It is the word avin is the root word for Anoni. Let's go to where this word is, one of the places this word is used in Scripture. 1 Samuel chapter 15. This is enlightening, to say the least, I believe. For rebellion, this is 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 21. For rebellion is like the sin of sorcery, stubbornness like the crime of avin. This is the root word of Anoni, son of idolatry. This is how it comes, son of idolatry. So the grief, because you have rejected the word of Elohim, he too has rejected you as king. This is the rejection of Shaul as king over Israel. And it is the rejection of Raquel. Because notice that Raquel is, and I'm not saying that Raquel is not part of the matriarchs of Israel. But here's something to ponder. Raquel is the first of and the only one of the matriarchs that will not be buried in Hebron at the cave of Machpelah. Just how serious are false gods? Just how serious are they? Well, in the case of Raquel, it appears that those idols that she hung on to would keep her from the full blessings of the Almighty in her life. My question every time that I go through this Torah portion is this: what are we holding on to? What are we holding on to that's holding us back from? Whatever plan B, what are false gods? It's plan B, it's whatever you say, well, here's the way to figure it out. Well, God will understand. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Well, God will or here's the one that I really love. When someone says, well, God will just have to understand. Really? That one is just over the top for me. But that's normally where we find the false gods come in there when we make statements like that. Which is more important to you? Making it the full way into the fullness of the covenant? She got to the land. She's at Bethlehem. Okay, she got into the land, but she didn't make it all the way. I think there's a message in there which I'll let you deal with. Now I want to go briefly in a couple minutes I have left to Hosea. That's the Haftorah portion for this week. And Hosea, understanding that this book is written to the northern kingdom. It's written to Ephraim. It's written to those that would be would be assimilated, sent into the diaspora, into exile, many years prior to the temple being destroyed and Judah being sent into exile. And so this is a book that if you relate yourself to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, this book is specifically written to you and I. And this week's Haftorah portion is chapter 11, verse 7 through chapter 12, verse 12. I want to go down to this in verse 7 or 8, depending on your translation, or let's go to 8 or 9. Ephraim says, I've gotten so rich. I've made me a fortune, and in all my profits no one will find anything wrong or sinful. Could we translate that to Raquel's life? I've gotten to the place that no one will know about my false idols. I've got I've got a kid now. Everything's fine. Pregnant. All of that stuff is passed away, and I can just kind of keep these under my saddle, and nobody will know about them. Next verse. But I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, from the land of Egypt. Again I will make you live in tents, as in the days of the established festival. What's he saying in that verse to Ephraim is that I will humble you. I will bring you back to the foundation of my word, which is the festivals. One of the foundations is the festivals. I will bring you back to those things. I'll make you live in tents. I will bring you back to a place of humbling you in order for you to make it all the way into the fullness of my promises. Was the death of Raquel a humbling experience for Jacob? I think so. Let's just decide to get rid of this stuff. Be a whole lot easier. Let's get rid of our dysfunction, all the things that hold us back, because we're heading forward. This world is heading forward, and we have a choice today. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. Until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha וייחונך. יישא אדוני פניו אליך, וישם לך שלום.